Take a moment and prepare to listen to a story about food in ancient Egypt. It is a calm, educational journey into everyday life, survival, and taste thousands of years ago. When people think about ancient Egypt, they imagine pyramids rising from the desert, golden mass, elaborate tombs, and gods with animal heads. Food rarely comes first to mind. And yet, without food, simple, repetitive, often boring food, Egypt would never have existed. This civilization did not survive for thousands of years because of magic or divine kingship. It survived because it mastered something far more fragile, feeding millions of people year after year in a harsh environment where nothing was guaranteed except the sun and the river. Ancient Egyptian food was not luxurious. It was practical. It was seasonal. It was repetitive. And it was deeply tied to the Nile. Everything begins with the river. Each year the Nile flooded its banks, leaving behind dark, fertile silt. This was not just water. It was life itself. The floods determined whether people would eat well or starve. A good flood meant full granaries. A weak flood meant hunger. A bad one could mean death. Egyptians did not have refrigerators, freezers, or global trade routes. Their entire food system depended on prediction, experience, and patience. They planted when the water receded. They harvested when the land dried. They stored what they could and hoped it would last. Bread was the foundation of everything, not soft bread, not fluffy bread. Egyptian bread was dense, dark, and often gritty. Grain was ground by hand using stone querns. Sand and small stones inevitably mixed into the flour, slowly wearing down people's teeth over a lifetime. Archaeologists can still see this damage in ancient skulls. The grain was usually emmer wheat or barley. The dough was mixed with water, sometimes with leftover fermented dough from the previous batch. There were no precise measurements. Everything was done by feel, by habit, by memory passed down through generations. The bread was baked in clay ovens or directly on hot stones. Some loaves were flat, others conical. Many were undercooked inside and burnt outside. This was normal. Perfect bread was not the goal. Enough bread was. Alongside bread came beer. Beer in ancient Egypt was not a luxury drink. It was food. Thick, cloudy, low in alcohol, and full of nutrients. Children drank it. Workers drank it. Priests drank it. It was safer than water and easier to digest than raw grain. Beer was made by partially baking bread, crumbling it into water, and allowing it to ferment naturally. The result was sour, filling, and unpredictable. Some batches were better than others. Some probably tasted awful. But it kept people alive. Together, bread and beer formed the core of the Egyptian diet. They were paid as wages. They were offered to gods. They were buried with the dead. Beyond bread and beer, there were vegetables. Onions were everywhere. Garlic, leeks, lentils, chickpeas. These were not side dishes. They were essential nutrition. Onions in particular were so important that workers building royal tombs were sometimes paid extra rations of them. Not because they tasted good, but because they kept people strong. Vegetables were eaten raw, boiled, or stewed. Oil was scarce. Spices were limited. Flavor came from freshness, not complexity. Meat existed, but not often. For most Egyptians, meat was rare. Beef was expensive and usually reserved for temples or elite households. Sheep and goats were more common, but still not daily food. When animals were slaughtered, every part was used. Poultry was more accessible. Ducks and geese were raised along the Nile. Fish, however, was the real protein of the people. The river was full of fish. They were caught with nets, traps, or spears. Fresh fish spoiled quickly in the heat, so preservation was critical. Fish were salted, dried in the sun, or fermented. The smell must have been overwhelming. Some fish were forbidden at certain times for religious reasons. Others were sacred. Diet was not just about survival. It was also about belief. Fruit added sweetness to life. Dates were the most common. Figs, grapes, pomegranates. Fruit was eaten fresh when possible, dried for storage, or used in simple desserts mixed with honey. Honey was the main sweetener. Sugar did not exist. Honey was valuable, sticky, and precious. It was used in food, medicine, and religious offerings. Milk existed, but dairy was limited. Cows, goats, and sheep produced milk, but it spoiled quickly. Some cheese was made, probably sour and salty. Butter, as we know it, did not really exist. Dairy was never central to the diet. Food preparation was labor. Grinding grain took hours. Carrying water took hours. Baking took hours. Nothing was quick. Nothing was automated. Cooking was often done outdoors, surrounded by smoke, insects, and heat. Women did most of this work, day after day, year after year. There were no days off. Temples and elites ate differently. Priests and officials had access to better cuts of meat, more variety, imported wine, and refined bread. But even their food was simple by modern standards. There were no elaborate sauces, no complex recipes, no excess seasoning. Food was about sustenance, not indulgence. Feasts existed, especially during religious festivals. These moments mattered because they broke the monotony. For most people, eating was not exciting, it was necessary. And yet, this simple food built a civilization. Workers who built pyramids were not slaves. They were fed. Bread, beer, onions, fish. Enough calories to move stone. Enough protein to survive injuries. Enough routine to keep society stable. This is the part we forget. We romanticize the past. We imagine feasts and abundance. The reality was repetition, scarcity, skill, patience. Ancient Egyptians lived close to hunger, one bad flood away. And still, they endured. They organized food storage. They tracked seasons. They respected the river. They understood limits. Modern people often talk about ancient wisdom. This was part of it, not philosophy, not magic, logistics. Today, we open refrigerators without thinking. We waste food casually. We forget what it means to depend on a harvest. Ancient Egyptians never forgot. Their food was not glamorous. But it was enough. And sometimes, enough is what builds history.